Great to be here. Now, I'm going to break one of my fundamental rules right out of the gate. I'm going to ask you to do something before I deliver any value. All right? So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give you an instruction. I'm going to ask you to follow that instruction for about 10 seconds. Then, do you trust me? I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you another question. Okay. Please look around the room and look for all the things that you see that are green. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do that. Okay, close your eyes, please. Everybody close your eyes. If you're uncomfortable closing your eyes, you can look down. Just shout out all the things that you saw that were red. Go ahead.
Note paper.
Okay. Okay. Oh, your eyes are still supposed to be closed, by the way. That's not fair. Okay. Now shout out all the things that you saw that were green. Right. Right. Okay. All right. You can stop now. You can open your eyes. Why couldn't you see anything that was red? You weren't looking for red. Okay. I want you to put a pin in that for a moment. I came to North America, Canada, when I was 3 years old. My parents left East Africa looking for a better life for their kids. Through a series of serendipities and failures, my dad found himself in a really dumpy old gas station running it as a business with a couple $1,000s in his pocket. We were living in a very, let's say, not ethnic part of the country in 1972, and we were the only people of color. I watched over the series of years how my dad connected personally with each and every individual person that came into his gas station. With deep empathy, understood. He knew which people in their families were having domestic issues. He knew which people were having trouble with money. He knew which people were struggling with challenges with their children. And he basically organized his entire business to cater to the diversity of people that he was dealing with. And I worked with him over the course of several years. By the time he retired, he had 4 locations doing very well, and now he's retired. Over the course of that journey, I watched him very closely, I worked with him very closely, and I developed a real passionate interest in 2 areas of business. One is marketing, and specifically understanding customer needs. And the other is organizational behavior. How to design organizations and processes and hiring to deliver what customers need. By the time I was 17, I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know how, but I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I went to university, studied marketing and organizational behavior, approached it with every job I ever took. I thought I was really smart. And I'm going to tell you a story about how I got to the point where I realized I was actually an idiot. So went all the way. Went to graduate school, business school, ended up getting a job with a management consulting firm. So 2003, post-tech bubble burst, post-September 11th, a company called Purolator Courier in Canada. Basically the largest transportation company in Canada. $1 billion in revenue, competes with FedEx and UPS. They were bigger. They had come out of the verge of going under because they weren't making any money, $1 billion in revenue. They just went through a period where they increased their prices across the board. What happens when you start increasing your prices across the board? Customers start leaving you, right? But they had no choice because they had to turn things around. So the first people to leave were the people they said, we actually wanted them to leave. They were way too expensive to serve anyway. But then they started recognizing that 71% stat, people that didn't want to leave were starting to look around, and they were leaving. So I was with the consulting firm, strategy firm. Remember, I thought I was really smart. They hired, Purelator hired our consulting firm to help them out of this mess. After fixing the pricing, now they wanted to get back to growth. They wanted to retain customers. They wanted to grow customers. They wanted to become much more customer-centric. And so I was staffed on this project. And one of the things I was responsible for was looking into the logistics marketplace to identify what are some new areas of opportunity. I was also assigned the responsibility of leading a team to interview customers, do customer surveys, interview salespeople to get a deep understanding of customer needs, right? Remember my passion, marketing and organizational behavior? My job, this was the dream job. My job was to figure out what customers' business needs were and work backwards and help this company identify new opportunity spaces. I was feeling pretty good about myself. And we did the consulting project. We ended up with, the whole thing, PowerPoint deck about this thick, beautiful graphs and slides, segmented the market, seven needs-based customer segments, 4 new opportunity spaces, an estimate of $500 million in revenue from existing customers, from retention, from growth, and for bringing on new business. Presented to the senior management team. They loved it. They were excited. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Finished the project, walked out the door. Marketing was the sponsor of that project. The VP of marketing had hired us. He had put his credibility on the line to get this $1 million project done. So now they were executing. They started designing products. They had asked us to develop a strategy for the sales force to go and execute and sell these products in the marketplace. I was pretty smart. I came up with great questions they could ask and go out and talk to customers and find out how to find customers to sell these new products to. My client called me a year in saying, nothing's happening. It's not working. We're not getting the attention of customers. Nobody's buying. We can't even get any pilot customers to try these things. They were blaming salespeople. I was feeling very responsible and starting to feel like maybe I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. So I talked to the VP of marketing and I took a bit of a risk and I said, why don't you hire me and create a position in the organization? Let me see if I can help you execute it. Great idea. That's what he said. He hired me. The first day I show up to work, he's a fan. The VP of marketing is a fan of mine. I go into his office and say, welcome. He says to me, I have a bit of news for you. You're not going to report to me. I'm actually we're going to make you report to the head of sales. And I just want to tell you, the head of sales does not believe in this project. The head of sales does not believe in the $500 million in revenue that you've identified. He does not believe that the needs you've identified are something that the salespeople can uncover. His office is down there. I was screwed, right? Like I gave up my consulting gig and I came to this place hoping to make a difference. And yes, he was skeptical, but he was willing to give me a shot. I went around the country and met with salespeople and showed them this work. And they all said, the needs you're saying are right. Our customers have these needs. The products you're identifying are right. But for some reason, it's not working. Our CFO of the company went to a talk very much like this, where a gentleman named Phil Sterland, who was the CEO of the Summit Group, was talking. A talk very similar to the one I'm giving you now. That CFO came back to the office and said, Shaquille, I think you need some help. I think you're in over your head. I think you should call this guy Phil and have a conversation with him. So I called Phil. He came up to Toronto, sat down. I pulled out my 100-page consulting PowerPoint deck with all the needs and the business opportunities, and he listened and he watched and asked any questions, 2-hour presentation. And then he gets up at the end of it. He's very professorial. And he says to me, in the words of Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. I would not give a fig for simplicity on this side of complexity, but I would give my life for simplicity on the other side of complexity. Do you know what the hell that means? Because I didn't. So that was the beginning of my journey, realizing I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. And what he said was, before you did this work, the salespeople were selling a movement of a package from point A to point B at this price. Pretty simple. And then you did all this like market research and beautiful slides, by the way, really good stuff, like very interesting, all this market research. But you didn't come out the other side of that complexity to the simplicity again. That was the moment I realized I had to change the way I looked at things. So he pulls up a flip chart, a marker, draws a picture on the board that changed, I'm not kidding you, changed my entire career. Not only changed my career, changed the career of anybody in the organization that embraced it after we rolled it out with them. The people that embraced it are now in senior leadership positions in sales organizations all over North America, one of which actually Neville works for. That was a coincidence, by the way. I didn't know he was going to be here. And so that's what I want to share with you today. Are you interested in that? Okay. So, very, very important quote. Oh, sorry. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Phil asked me a question. He said, we do a lot of research with customers and buying organizations. And one of the things we ask regularly is, of all the salespeople, key account managers that call on you, what % of them are worth your time? He asked me to guess. So I'm going to ask you to guess. Of all the customers that you call on, how many % of them would say that you are worth their time? Just shout it out. 5%? 15? Yeah. You guys are in the right zone. 7%. 7% of customers say that the people that call on them are worth their time. So the big question in my mind, what the hell are they doing, right? And he goes, well, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to tell you what the other 93% are doing. He said the other 93% customers tell us, they come into a sales meeting or a customer conversation and they ask a bunch of questions. And as soon as they hear an answer to a question that sounds like a product that they sell or want to start talking about it, they go into marketing collateral mode. They start talking about their product. And guess what? We know they've been through spin selling and sales training. We know that they have questions. And we know that you guys probably gave them a bunch of questions to ask to figure out what product is interesting to us. That's what the 93% do. So the next question is, of course, what do the 7% do? The 7% listen beyond the product. The 7% ask questions to understand deeply what matters to us. The 7% align our needs with expertise, knowledge, capabilities, and yes, some products that you might have inside the company. And they work together creatively to put it all together, and collaboratively we create a solution. So if I'm successful, I'll answer Gail's question that she asked at the end of JC's presentation. How can we be more creative at focusing our conversations on their needs, what matters to them, and work backwards? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you go into your customer organizations and you look at that if you look at them from the perspective of the product or service you're selling, what are you going to see? You're going to see needs that align with the products and services that you're selling. You're going to see green napkins, and you're going to see green sweaters, and you're going to see all the things for the colors you are looking for. You're not going to see all the other beautiful colors that represent all of the other things they're interested in. You're not going to see their problems and their challenges. You're going to see only the problems that you think your product and your marketing collateral says that you can solve, and you're going to miss the boat, and you're going to be in the 93%. Right? Traditional thinking starts in box 1. You have a product or service to sell. You bring that product or service to your customer, and your job is to get your customer to care about your product or service. Your job is to get your customer to choose you or choose the next thing you have to offer over somebody else or doing nothing. And then hopefully they'll take that product or service and they'll do something with it and they'll meet the needs of their end customer. But you never really talk about that, right? When I say you, I don't mean you in the room, because some of you are in the 7%, I believe. But that's basically how it works. That's the way the whole system is set up. In fact, customers are trained to operate this way, right? They know you're going to come in, they'll ask some questions, and they'll talk to you, and okay, get to the pitch. Just tell me what you want to tell me. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So third box thinking is this. You don't start by looking at your customer's needs. You start by looking at their customer's needs. You go all the way over them and you look at the end customer and you start asking the questions of, so what's your customer seeking from you? Who are your customers? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? What are they seeking? And once you have a deep understanding of that, then you move to your customer. And one of the things your customer will care about is how do they solve the needs of their customer, right? And that's where you're starting from. How are they solving the needs of their customer? And then what else do they care about? And then and only then are you in a position to then go back to you and then say, now what do we bring? And guess what? That's when you see the reds, the oranges, and the purples, and all the other colors, which then allow you to look inside your organization and say, we have way more than our product. We've got expertise, we've got, logistics capabilities, we've got really smart people, I've got networks. And now you can bring value that is relevant to what they're trying to do to grow their business by growing the business of their end customer. So you're not in the business of growing your customer's business. You're in the business of growing your customer's business. And sometimes, guess what? That's not going to happen by selling them your product. It's going to happen by offering them other capabilities, expertise, services, advice, and along the way, selling them your product. Because in order to get you, they've got to get your product. So you are the differentiator, not your product or your service. That's when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So we're going to walk you through a process here of doing this. So step 1, I'm going to do what Phil did for me. So you've got some paper distributed at your tables, or you have your own piece of paper. Just take literally 3 or 4 minutes, because you know this well. I want you to draw your third box picture. So start with your company name, box 1. Just draw the picture. Pick a customer, the name of that customer in the second box. And in the third box, I want you to think about who is an end customer of theirs. Now here's a trick, a secret. Third boxes is usually never 3 boxes. It's usually 4, 5, 6, or 7 boxes. But 4, 5, 6, or 7 boxes isn't a really good trademarkable thing. So we call it third box thinking. But it's essentially value chain thinking. So take literally no longer than 3 minutes to just draw your picture. 3 squares or 4 squares or 5 squares. We're going to be working on that over the course of the next little while. Now, what we're going to ask you to do is make a decision a little bit of consensus on your table. Because we want there to be discussion interaction, I could do this by having each of you work independently by yourself at every break point, but it'll be too quiet and it'll be kind of boring. So we want to leverage the expertise in the room. So what we're going to ask you to do at your tables, once you've drawn your picture, is just to make a decision, be charitable, pick one of the third box pictures at your table, and you're going to all wrap yourselves around that third box picture. So I'll give you a little bit to finish that. So I'm going to do something I learned from a teacher in a village in Africa when I went to visit there to make sure she had the class together. So when I ask this question, I want you all to say yes at the same time. Are we together? Yes. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about a situation that we worked on here. Third box thinking. Everybody here knows Panera Bread, right? So in 2016, Panera Bread was having a bit of a challenge. I don't know if you can read this from where you are, but essentially people were saying they love their product, their food is fantastic, it's excellent food, but their service sucks. There's too many people in line, my order's wrong, get it together, or we go somewhere else. Your execution is terrible. Obviously, everybody all the way to the top, including the board of directors, noticed this and said, we have to do something. So they put an RFP out and they said, we're looking for a provider of a technology solution to help us improve our retail customer experience. They included their existing supplier in this. And our existing supplier said, holy, we may lose this account, right? So the existing supplier could have, hopefully this advance is right, yeah. Existing supplier was Worldwide Technology. Systems integrator, IT consultant, and they worked with Apple and Cisco. And so the first instinct was to say, okay, here's their problem. What do we bring, right? Let's write the RFP. What do we bring? Somebody in key account management was smart enough to say, hang on a second. Before we go down that path, let's make sure we truly understand the problem. And they happened to have a relationship with Phil. And we ended up working with them. And we went through a workshop. Because they were already a supplier, they had access. So they brought in the customer and they started a conversation. Who's your end customer? What do they seek? What are they looking for? What's happening in their life? And guess what? Look beyond just the transaction of buying food from Panera Bread. Who are they? What do they care about? So they came up with a list of things, right? Quality of food, menu items, near a place they work, efficiency ordering process, all of that stuff, right? Easy stuff. You could build this list in like 30 seconds. No. People will say, oh, but in order to do this, we have to do market research and we have to go ask questions. And will our customers let us do market research with our customers? You don't need market research. You can buy food from Panera. You know what's important to you. You can do this in 5 minutes. So you do that exercise. Then they said, okay, who's next in the chain? They went back and they said, okay, the store operations, the store managers. Well, they're trying to create value for the end customer, but they have a bunch of other things they care about. They're trying to grow revenue, improve service, look after employee safety, build loyalty, new offers, lots of things they care about. One of the things they care about is faster ordering, faster production, lining up supply and demand. Then they look at the IT organization, which was the customer in the case of this RFP. What do they care about? The number of things identified on the list. Integrate legacy systems, quick deployment. This has got to be fast. All eyes are on us. Pressure's on us. It's got to be successful. It's got to be on time, on budget. Then Worldwide Technology says, okay, based on all of that, now what do we bring? If they had done this without this exercise, they would have probably stopped at the first few things on the list. But what they were able to add was what we call, and we'll talk about in a little bit, value enablers. Services, expertise, places they've done this before, connections with other clients that were also seeing the same issues in their industries, advisory boards. I brought a bunch of these things to the mix, and they kept the business. They worked on it collaboratively. They did this exercise then collaboratively with the customer at the table. And the outcome, wrong way. The outcome was successful. Panera turned it around. Now, did they turn it around because they put technology in place? No, they turned it around because in addition to the technology, they formed a partnership with a company, and together they identified a bunch of other expertise, insights, knowledge, deepening understanding of customer needs to build a collaborative, creative solution. So that was the outcome in this case. So essentially, over the last several years, it's been a bit of my life's journey and work, is I've taken this principle of not customer centricity, but customer centricity. And I've recently combined the field of human-centered user experience design. Anybody familiar with design thinking or been through a design thinking workshop? Gail, what was the experience like? Bruce, what was the experience like? Right. Interactive, lots of drawing, lots of flip charts, lots of creativity, arts and crafts, one of my clients used to call it. Arts and crafts. Every time I did a PowerPoint slide, she goes, oh, you're just the arts and crafts department. Right? But lots of fun, going back to our childhood and the creativity and the stickers and all that stuff that makes it fun. So we're combining the two together. Third box thinking, a mindset and a set of tools and frameworks, and human-centered creative problem solving through design thinking. Design thinking, here's the general steps. You can read about it anywhere. Empathize. What does the customer care about? What matters to them? Define their problem. Ideate to solve their problem. And then there's prototype and test. We don't have time to go through the whole thing today. We're going to focus on the first three. So, first step, you form a design team. That design team, think of it as one layer below the customer advisory board, where customer advisory board, you have the CEOs. So double click on one member of that customer advisory board and go a layer down. Remember that diagram that Harvey shared, the zipper diagram? I've never seen it with a zipper. I love that, Harvey, by the way. Right? You create the mirror team with people from the customer organization and your organization. Can't be too big. 10 people, maybe 12 max. Create a mirror team. Not looking for equal representation, looking for intelligence, insight, customer understanding, willing to roll up their sleeves, willing to partner, get them around the table. And you work through this exercise with them. You always recommend to get a facilitator that's not invested in the process, but be able to keep you on track, because part of design thinking means working fast, moving quick, combination of independent thinking. We asked you individually to draw your own little diagram first, and then we're going to have a conversation together. So you pull the team together, and we've designed third box thinking design workshops. Very, very simple. So super simple that it's ridiculous that I get paid for what I do. It really is. Third box thinking at the top. You start drawing out your third box picture together. You define an end customer persona based on the customer segments. You identify what's the customer problem we're trying to solve here. You ideate together. Arts and crafts, post-it notes, stickers. How might we exercise it? You identify what's the so what here for the customer? What is the business result if we do this? What's the impact on the customer need? Do we solve the customer's problem? Then you talk about what can we bring? What can we bring together? What are some prototypes we can put in place? How will we test those prototypes? And what's our future narrative, our future value narrative for our new partnership? After going through this intense exercise, 2, 3, 4 days, depending on the complexity, you come out of this with this future value narrative that says, here is how we're going to co-create the future for both our companies. That's the outcome. So, end customer, you start there. What do they seek? Who is your end customer? Who is your customer's ideal end customer? What are their current behaviors? What are their needs and goals? What matters to them in life? You have a deep, slow down conversation with this team to answer these questions based on their customer segments. So there's a bit of an exercise that says, okay, if these are your customer segments, which are the most high priority customer segments? Within that customer segment, let's pick a persona. So you define the personas. Try to put real faces, right? Go to Google Images and find some real faces of people that represent the persona, right? Young professional, millennial young professional, retired individuals, empty nesters enjoying life, fast-moving urban professional, maybe business owner. 3 examples. You could have a long list of these, but the idea is to pick. So you define a persona for your end customer, and you build a story around the customer. What matters to them? Make up a story around their family, their career, their wealth situation. What are they seeking? Their education. What are they seeking? Their health. How are they doing now? What are the challenges they might be having? Their family challenges. What's their role in their communities? I love this part of the process because it's that creative, part of creating a story for somebody, and you can draw on experience of people in the group, in fact, and create a composite character. You create a character. And here's an example of one. So Chloe is the founder of a small technology company that serves nonprofits. She's a single mom of a 15-year-old. Her life requires high energy and stamina, and staying healthy is a priority for her. She usually picks up healthy lunch on her way back from her fitness class, en route to an afternoon of meetings. She schedules her work and life precisely. It's the only way she can stay on top of all of the details. Between work and home responsibilities, she does not have much time for anything else and gets frustrated when circumstances disrupt her routine. Took me all of about 5 minutes to write this. It'll take you longer when you do it with your customer, but what a beautiful exercise, right? It's real now, right? You're no longer looking at their business from the perspective of your lens. You're looking at the life of Chloe. You want to solve Chloe's problem. Together, you're looking at Chloe's life. So what's the problem? She is extremely busy and highly scheduled. Long lines and wait times disrupt her schedule. She needs consistent predictability in time and process to order and pick up her lunch. You got a problem now you're solving. So that's activity part 2. So we're not going to be able to go through all of that in the time. So I want to give you just 5 minutes. And here's what I want to ask the person that whose picture you're working with. I want you to treat everybody at the table like the end customer. So tell them what's the simple profile of that end customer, and ask them questions to understand what are they seeking. What do they care about? What matters to them in their life? And just bullet point this out, like literally 5 minutes. Don't take longer than 5 minutes. Go. We did this in 5-10 minutes. You would have a deeper conversation with your customer about this. So when you talk about how do we get earlier we had people asking questions in the last couple of days, how do we get our customers to have a more deeper conversation with us? How do we get them to engage with us? What starts as a 10-minute conversation will turn into 2 or 3 hour conversation. They will be scheduling more time with you to do this. They will be asking you, can we do this again? I want to bring this person, and this person, and this person. Every time. Every person that does this always says, I just went in there trying to get 15 minutes of their time, and then I had to get out of there. I was late for another meeting. They wanted to keep talking about it. When you do this with them, you will together see things that they don't already see, because guess what they're doing? They're focused on their product. And they're seeing their customer from the lens of their product. So when you ask them the question, like, what else do they really care about? What else matters? What else matters? They also start seeing things. And this is how you start to become, slowly but surely, the trusted advisor. By asking them deeper questions about the things that matter to their customer. Who does not want to talk about their customer? I can guarantee you they don't want to talk about your product. But they would love to talk to you about their customer and the challenges their customers giving them. That's the process. And once you're in that game, it builds a flywheel. It builds a momentum that you can't stop even if you wanted to, unless you really piss them off about, I don't know. But it builds a flywheel of momentum. Can we do it again? Can we do it again? Can we do it again? Right? So very, very exciting. Okay. So then you move to a conversation that starts with, so how are you solving the customer's problem? What's the problem and how are you solving it today? You can even go as bold and say, how are we solving your customer's problem? How's that going? And now I'm going to introduce a little framework that my friend Phil took from a marriage counseling workshop that he and his wife went to after their youngest child left for university. He said to her, so what do you want to do, dear? Well, there's this workshop that the church is running, and I'd really like to do this to make sure they have a great relationship, but she wanted to invest in it. And in that workshop, the facilitator shared this matrix as a guide to a conversation. You see, I don't know why my full things aren't coming up. There we go. Simple framework. In this relationship, this is the marriage counseling workshop, by the way. In this relationship, I'll use Phil. What's Phil doing today that you want him to keep doing? What's Phil doing today that you want him to stop doing? Being really loud on conference calls in the living room was one of them. What's Phil not doing today that you want him to start? Telling me when he's going to go out of town, a week before he's going to go out of town. What are you not doing today? What's Phil not doing today that you don't want him to ever do? Right? This is the deal breakers. It may not be happening today. You want to make sure it never happens. You want to celebrate these things. All right. So that was 10 years ago. Phil's very happily married, by the way, still to this day. Phil said, this could work in facilitated conversations between customers and their suppliers. And so I'm putting another twist on it. Once you define the end customer's problem, you have a conversation with your customer that says, so what are you doing today that your customer wants you to continue doing in relationship to that problem? What are you not doing today that you think your customer wants you to do? Easy ordering. Order on my way from the gym to the restaurant. Their food being ready when they show up. What are they doing that is a pain and you want them to stop doing? Making me wait. What are they not doing that you never want them to do? You have this conversation. Flip charts, post-it notes, right? And you put it up and you'll be amazed what you will see together. And even if there's no earth-shattering insights that come from that, I guarantee you there will be. You did it together. You're deepening that relationship. You're in this together. It's a conspiracy together to meet the needs of Violet's problem. Or Sophia, I think was another name that came up. So that's a very simple framework, right? Super simple, right? This is easy stuff. Now you want to shift to your customer and what they care about. We're probably in day 2 of a session, by the way, now at this point. But now you want to shift to understand now what your customer cares about. Box 2. Very simple. Every business has these compass points. Every business has issues, challenges, initiatives that are related to their growth of market. Every has initiatives related to improving their customer experience. Every company has an initiative or a challenge related around fighting the competition. Every organization has a challenge, especially now, around organization and talent. Every business is managing their finances, has various risk profiles. Some have a lot of money and they need to invest it in something to get a return. Some people don't have enough money and they need to solve it. Every organization, supply chain, chip shortages, has operational issues that they're struggling with. This is the equivalent of seeing more than the green tablecloths and napkins and sweaters. This is the point at which you see their entire business. You may only be relevant today to their organization and talent. In the case of the folks working in staffing, you may be only relevant in the area of operations for the folks working in transportation and logistics. Maybe. But if you see things whole and you see all the colors, you'll be amazed at what you can see that might be relevant beyond that. But you're still not at the point at which we're thinking about what can we do to solve their problem. No, you're still getting a deeper understanding of what their issues are, what their initiatives are. So you call that the compass because you want to figure out where is their pain point, where's the needle pointing right now on their current state. Where are they now? What issues, initiatives are going on for them right now in each of these parts of the compass, and where is it pointing? But then we have an opportunity now to help our customers and work with our customers to look into the future because nobody knows what's coming, right? We talked about lack of certainty. This is the real opportunity. You're in this together now moment where together you bring intelligence, insights, experts into the conversation. Who was it that said the other day, can we bring people that are not customers into the conversations? Right? This is where you bring kind of tangential industries, expertise into the conversation, and you start talking about, okay. In the market customer section, what's changing about the way people work, travel, live? What's changing? What's coming down the pipe? What are the new competitors emerging? What are some of the mergers out there? What are some of the agencies? What are things like Airbnb, now the biggest hospitality company in the industry? What are some of the things we're seeing happening out there? What's the new talent landscape look like? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges that emerge? Guess what? We can have trouble because people are leaving us. But also, guess what? We can hire from anywhere in the world now. Financial risk. Where are their sources of capital? Do they have a lot of cash? Do they need cash? Is there pressure on margins? Is there pressure on revenue? What's their cost structure look like? Going to look like? And what's the future of manufacturing? What's the future of service? What's the implication of technology on the way they serve their customers, on the way they run their supply chain? Future-oriented conversation where no one knows the answer, but you're collecting perspectives. Also a very powerful conversation to have with your customer. And as you're doing this, right, every stage of the way, like in a 3-4 day period, you are like strengthening the partnership in a way that you could not do in a year without doing kind of this focused kind of conversation with them. So your customer, what do they care about? Back to activity, back to your table. You want to have a conversation, and you have some perspective here. So the person that's doing the picture, you can add here, but ask other people because all you need to do to be able to answer this, you don't need to know the customer's business. You just have to have business acumen. Because that's what all businesses care about, a similar set of things, right? Distributors care about common things. Retailers care about common things. So you can all contribute to this. If you have a little bit of business acumen, you can contribute to this. So another 5 minutes at your tables, fill in that middle box. This is the point at which you say, what expertise do I bring? As a human being, as an individual, what knowledge do I bring? And let me scan all my realms of expertise and interest and knowledge. I was just reading this article the other day. I was just talking to this customer the other day. I just went to this event and I heard this speaker talk about this. I think that might be relevant to some of these things that you care about. You're talking about things that matter to them and you're listening beyond your product. And when you start doing this, guess what? You're in the 7%. You're in the 7% because you're listening beyond your product and you're bringing expertise that extends beyond your product. And therefore, your product becomes more valuable. That's the biggest mindset shift here, is realizing that you actually, don't tell marketing this, you as individuals actually create way more value, potentially, than the product that you sell does. Customer advisory board, perfect example. When you get people around the table and 2 of the members of the customer advisory board connect and they develop an initiative together that has nothing to do with you, you can stake a claim to the value you created there. When you introduce a customer to a real estate agent because they've just moved into the city and they don't know where to go, what neighborhood to look at, you've just added value beyond the product. When you start thinking that way, the cupboards are full of things that you can add. And it's so liberating to think beyond the green napkins, right? You see so much more, you add so much more value. So then you start having a deeper conversation. So you've understood what they care about. Now you have some conversations that say, so what are some of the key initiatives, the key projects you're doing in your organization today? You've gotten good trust by this point. What are some of the key initiatives you're working on today? And deeper questions. Why are you working on those initiatives? And by why you're working on this initiative, I don't mean superficial why because we've been told to. I'm talking about if you don't succeed on that initiative, what's the cost of failure? If you succeed on that initiative, what all wonderful things will happen for you personally and the organization? Why is this initiative important? What are you doing about it, if anything? Because if they're doing something about it and it's important to them, you better be plugged into that conversation if you want to be relevant, right? And if they're not doing something about it and it's really important, there's your opportunity to start adding some value. There's your opportunity to go inside your organization and say, what do we know about this? What do we know about this? Do I know anybody else that has an initiative like this going on in my customer network? Who can I connect the dots with to help them because they don't have anything going on here? How are they going to measure success? Because if they don't have a measurement attached to it, it can't be that important. If they do have a measurement attached to it, you better make sure you understand that measurement and you better understand your role in contributing to meeting that measurement. And when you are presenting a value proposition to them about your product, somehow, if your product doesn't meet that metric, you better add a value enabler in there that could help meet that metric because that's the only way you're going to be relevant. And who else cares in the organization? Beyond the customer you're talking to, who else matters? Other people inside the organization, who else matters? And if you don't know who they are, find out who they are. If you've never met them before, meet them. Have this conversation with them. Even better if you say, should we invite them into this conversation? So many hooks and opportunities to kind of deepen this relationship through this conversation. Okay. Now you get to come to you. This is the point at which everybody feels a huge stress relief. Can I finally talk about me and my product and what we sell finally? Usually when we do this, because usually we do a prep session before we do the session with the customers and we kind of train the key account managers on this, usually kind of the first half of day one, maybe even later into day one, super uncomfortable because they can't talk about our products yet. This is not making sense. How do we fit? How do we fit in this story? How do I matter? You're not talking about that yet. And then you get to day two and you say, okay, now I'm seeing so much more and now I'm relevant. So what do you bring now? And when you do this together, you see more than what you bring. You see what else the customer brings. What other capabilities, expertise do they have that they haven't even seen in themselves yet? So now, typically, when we start this process, I'm not sure why this happens, but I have to go advance to go back. So typically what happens, we call them care about. So you've been through a discussion, a journey, you've looked at the end customer, you looked at your customer, you've looked at issues and initiatives, you've boiled it down to a set of maybe 3 things they care about. There's 3 really important things at the top of all of that they really care about. Like, if you hadn't gone through this discussion that we had today, your first instinct would say, okay, what are my products? What are my products? What am I going to sell? This is how I get to talk my products now all of a sudden, and the collateral comes out. Put the collateral away, don't talk about your products. This is that point where you say, what else do I bring that's relevant to what they care about? Now, I should be fair. If your product is relevant to what care about legitimately, of course. But still resist the temptation. Because the minute you start talking about your product, you're not going to see the other stuff. What else do you have? if they have a challenge in their hiring and recruiting, even if you're not a company that helps with hiring and recruiting, is there somebody in your HR department that's cracked the code? Or do you have another supplier that's really good at it that you could introduce them to? If they're doing brand identity work and you don't do brand identity work, but you've got somebody in the marketing department that's really good at brand identity work. So here's another aside. If you want to engage other people in your organization into the relationship, into caring about your customer, a great way to do that is to go to the person in marketing and say, Sylvie, I've got a customer that really needs your expertise. You've done some great work in this area around defining a customer persona, and my customer's struggling with this. Can I just connect the two of you? You lift up their self-esteem, you lift up their day, you've made a new friend. Guess what? When you need Sylvie to do something, you're going to get Sylvie to do something, right? Because you're serving Sylvie's needs. Supply chain problem. Hey, can you talk to the distribution manager at our customer organization? They're having a challenge right now with redesigning their warehouse. You did that with our warehouse. Can you have a chat with them? They never get attention. Nobody ever wants to talk to the person on the warehouse floor. You start building them into the conversation. So, value enablers. Value enablers are in two flavors. Resources, experts you have within your company. Sylvie, operations, distribution. And your own personal knowledge and your own personal networks. Who else do you know? What other knowledge do you bring? What are other ideas that you have? You bring those into the value proposition. And then you bring in your core products. And now you've got a value-enabled solution. And then you're at a place where you can start filling in the rest of the picture and saying, what do we bring? What do we bring? So the rest of the story is after this first conversation, this realization that I was actually being an idiot when I talked to Phil, right? The rest of the conversation was this. Phil said, forget the entire sales force. Let's pick a handful of companies. And the focus of my job was then, with a list of criteria, working with the strategic accounts team and the field sales team to identify a handful of customers in every part of the company who they wanted to apply this with. So we brought them together and we shared this stuff with them. And then we identified this handful of companies. And then we started a process. So some of the companies, major companies like Adele, for example, we would bring in a professional facilitator, right? For other companies, smaller companies, we'd say, okay, well, let's make sure, let's enable the key account managers to run this themselves, or maybe there's somebody else on the team that can run this workshop. And they run these workshops, they transform relationships, and then you tell stories about those transformed relationships. At President's Club, you get these presentations of these transformed relationships and these stories. And it's really incredible how quickly that catches in a culture. Spreads. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. And as that starts changing, you'll start seeing the relationships deepen. You'll start seeing retention. You'll start seeing customer growth. So we did this over the course of, it took a long time to work it through. I'll be honest with you. The biggest part of resilience I learned over the last 2 years, feels like 3, is look forward with hope and optimism, but know it's going to be damn difficult, right? So I've been all sunshine and flowers here, I think. This is really hard to do. First of all, just shifting the mindset is really hard to do. Then convincing others to participate, hard to do. So you don't start by trying to solve everything. Pick one customer. We have a set of evaluation criteria. Customers that were willing to partner with you. Customers that have potential for growth. You look at both the lagging and future-oriented indicators. Who could we do more with that we're not doing today? Who has more potential? You look at feasibility. You look at the impact. You can look at your potential to differentiate. You can look at who else on the team wants to come with you on this. Pick a customer. and then invest in that customer. And it becomes easier when you, instead of trying to say, let me do this with everybody, let me start by doing it with one customer. And then you build the muscle memory. And then guess what? Those mechanisms that we have in our brain to teach us how to walk, we take a couple of steps, we fall down, we reflect, we get up, we walk again, all of a sudden we can go to the other side of the room within a span of like weeks. How does that happen? It's brilliant, right? That same mechanism starts to work. You try it once, you fumble, you fail, it works the second time, it gets better and better, and then it becomes muscle memory, and guess what? You're now running. That's why I love that walk, crawl before you run, right? The crawling actually gives you the confidence to walk. That gives you the confidence to run. So start slow, pick one customer, work on it with one customer. So when I did that over the course of a couple of years, the CEO said, well, but marketing doesn't talk this way. Marketing produces collateral. And the collateral talks about our products. And they talk about our customers' needs. They don't talk about the customer's customer. They don't talk about what the customer is trying to do in their market. So then I got the job. I was on the verge of losing the job, by the way. That big stack consulting study I did, and the sales VP didn't like me, didn't like the project. I talked to Phil, and that started changing everything. So I did it with the sales force. Then I became head of marketing. So we now started transitioning the way marketing. We rebranded marketing. It was no longer called marketing. It was now called customer retention and growth. And we started doing this. We started building PowerPoint and questions and diagnostic tools so you can help the salespeople understand what matters and have these conversations. We built segment playbooks by segment because some segments have common care-abouts. And that went well, and I was given the opportunity to run a whole division, starting from scratch, that focused on supply chain solutions that started with this kind of thinking from the ground up. So when I say that this third box thinking actually changed my career, that's what I mean. I ended up then leaving and joined the Summit Group because I became so passionate about sharing this with people, because it's like so simple. It's like almost seems like a crime to hide it, right? So we start rolling it out. It's it becomes muscle memory now. And that's what it will be for you. It'll become muscle memory, but you got to do it first. So here's where we're getting to. And in fact, this is also the framework for that relevance statement I talked about. So this is the other thing, in addition to third box thinking, same premise, them. We wake up in the morning typically and we think about what are our targets, what are we trying to achieve, what problem are we trying to solve, how do we want to matter? Instead, you wake up in the morning saying, them. What do they care about? By the way, this is a great rule for life, right? Focus off of you and focus on the other. What do they care about? In this case, what are the pain points, pressures, or opportunities they're facing? Customer shifts, supply chain issues, competition, talent. What do they care about? What can I bring that's relevant? Yes, products, but knowledge, expertise, opportunities. What do I have that's relevant to what they care about? How can that impact what they care about? What's the direct connection to what I bring and what they care about? And finally, what can we do next? What are joint projects, prototypes, new products, new things we can do together? So this framework is a narrative for your relevance statement. It's also a framework for the next steps coming out of this kind of working with your customer. Thank you so much for your time. Really a pleasure working with you.